Welcome to Talking with the Experts. This is where we discuss great ideas to take your business to the next level. How do we know these ideas work? Well, it's because we're talking with business owners who are using these ideas. Business owners who have years of experience and expertise. All things business by business owners for business owners. And now, here is your host, Rose Davidson.
Hi, I'm Rose Davidson from Talking with the Experts. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank Global Glamping Charities for their valued support. Global Glamping Charities, solving homelessness in all its forms. Reach out to them at globalglamping.org.
Talking with the Experts.
In episode 460, Gayle Smerdon will make you laugh and make you think about how to improve your workplace in her keynote, Make Work Less Shit.
It can feel a little bit like this. I've just been to see what workplace heaven could look like. So this is what it could look like, and this is what it looks like at our place. Or it could be like this, but this is actually how we're doing it. Yeah. We're just not getting it right a lot of the times. And I'm hearing that from a lot of different people in organisations. So leaving the conference, I've worked away from workplace heaven and I've gone to the other place. And there's an American sociologist called W.E.B. Du Bois, which I think is a gorgeous name. And he sums up really, I think, what everyone's expectations are around work, and that.
Talking with the Experts.
Hello and welcome to Talking with the Experts. I'm your host, Rose Davidson from rosedavidson.com. Talking with the Experts is about all things business by business owners for business owners. You can find it on all good podcasting streaming platforms and on YouTube. And if you're looking for a video editor, hit me up in the DMs later when you have a bit of time after watching this wonderful video with Gayle Smerdon. Now, Gayle has an endless curiosity for understanding people and workplaces, and she is a passionate and experienced learning and organisational development professional who knows that given the right environment and support, people have amazing capabilities. For Gayle, helping organisations be their best comes from bringing out the best in their people. And Gayle's going to be discussing with us Make Work Less Shit, a pragmatic approach to improving your workplace. And I can't wait to see her slide presentation that I have seen before, and it's absolutely amazing. Welcome, Gayle. Thank you so much for sharing this slide presentation with us today.
That's okay. Thanks for having me. Always lovely to come and chat to you, Rose. So I sounded very, very positive in the introduction there, believing in people and stuff, and somehow I'm talking to you about making work less shit, but I think it just came out of a need to be a little bit less serious about a very serious topic, which is making the workplace positive. But I think there's a way that we can poke fun at it a bit as well, and I think we all just need a bit of a laugh at the moment. So yes,
I think so. And making work less boring or less uninteresting is always helpful, especially if you've got something that's a little bit tedious and you want to make your life a little bit more interesting rather than just humdrum everyday rubbish that goes on in the workplace.
So, doing things that are important, doing things that are going to have impact rather than just wasting your time on stuff that doesn't really matter.
Yeah, I agree. I totally agree. Well, The screen is yours, my dear. And
all right, let me share this a couple of pics with you to talk to you about my favourite topic, make work less shit. So yes, this was just a little bit of a joke to start with, but I'm actually quite passionate about it now. It's pretty much my same message, but just a slightly different take on it. And one of the reasons that I started talking about making work less shit with people was because I go to lots of conferences working as a learning and organisational development consultant, go to lots of conferences. I'm always reading lots of books and TED Talks and getting heaps of information on things that make work really, really fantastic. And I hear so many great ideas, and I'm sure you get so many great ideas on podcasts like this as well. And things like companies like Costco, hearing about case studies where Costco was compared to one of the other wholesale supermarkets, Walmart's, Sam's Club, in a really classic study that I heard about at a conference. And Costco said that they believing in people was critical to the success of the business. And you hear that a lot, but they really put their money where their mouth was. Now, in the States where this study was happening, of course, the minimum wage is quite minimum. But they decided that it was a real false economy for them to pay the least amount of money to the least number of people doing the most work. They just didn't think that was good to do for business and good to do for people. And if they really wanted to invest in their people, they could do better, and they did better. So they paid 72% more an hour than the comparative Sam's Club, gave 82% of employees health insurance, and that's compared to only 50% at the Walmart group. 92% premiums on that health insurance, as opposed to 66% at Walmart. And 91% of them had retirement plans, and they don't have, the superannuation that we have here that's compulsory. So they were just doing so much better by their workforce, just economically. What they found was that turnover at Costco was 17%. And if people stayed longer than a year, it got down to 6%. Whereas Walmart was having staff turnover at 44%. So it's almost 1 in 2 people leaving. And the savings that they made on rehiring and retraining actually made up for the cost that they put into better wages for people. So they really gave that some thought about what it was that they wanted to do, what was meaningful for them, and how they could support their people. And they, ended up with one of the most loyal and productive workforces in retailing. So that was Costco. I also heard about some groups like Patagonia, and they talk about a regenerative work environment where they want to leave their people better than they find them, much like what that means for agriculture, which is, leave the land better than you find it. They have some amazing things at Patagonia, a very, very flexible and supportive workplace, 100% health coverage, college reimbursement, fitness centres. They're really, really big on making sure that they've got childcare for people, huge flexibility, even for people who work in their warehouse. So there's like 15 different schedules that people can select from, and 3 weeks in advance. So there's a lot of certainty around what you're doing. And a little while ago, they moved to a 9-hour day so that they could have every second Friday off and have a long weekend. And there's been some reports on what that's meant to people, how it's improved their relationships and just their health and well-being generally. So they have a turnover rate of 4%, which is phenomenal, because the national figure, I think, is around 27%. So other companies, seem to be getting it really, really right. But then, a conference ends and I step out into the light of day, and I'm not going to eat carbs after all those muffins and sandwiches that I've eaten. But I head back to the workplace and I look around and I go, hang on a minute, this isn't like that. And it can feel a little bit like this. I've just been to see what workplace heaven could look like. So this is what it could look like, and this is what it looks like at our place. Or it could be like this, but this is actually how we're doing it. Yeah. we're just not getting it right a lot of the times. And I'm hearing that from a lot of different people in organisations. So leaving the conference, I've worked away from workplace heaven and I've gone to the other place. And there's an American sociologist called W.E.B. Du Bois, which I think is a gorgeous name. And he sums up really, I think, what everyone's expectations are around work, and that, the return must be satisfaction that work brings you. And truly, with it, your life is heaven, and without it, your life can be hell. And look, I can hear you saying, well, hang on a minute, Gayle, I think you're just being a bit harsh there. It's not really that bad. But there is some evidence that, there are some things going on that are a little bit less than ideal. And I hear these things from everywhere, from clients, friends, colleagues, the lady at the post office, the guy at the bus stop, my own professional experience. And yeah, there is some evidence that the workplace is a little bit shit. And one way that we can see that is in pay. We go to work to get some money. Money's a good thing. We like that. Fair day's work for a fair day's pay, but 80 cents in the dollar if you're a woman. When we feel like we deserve pay increase, then it's not uncommon to hear the phrase, well, any increase in salary needs to be matched with an increase in productivity. But a US study showed that over the last 40 years, frontline employees have lifted productivity by 61.8%, but their pay has increased by 17.5%, while CEOs' remuneration has increased by a whopping 940%. And I think that's a little bit shit. We also measure engagement in our workplaces, and it's a key measure for organisations because this sort of represents the level of commitment to the organisation and its goals. It's a bit like a care factor. High score, of course, indicates better outcomes for people and for business. And look, I think the good news is that globally we can say that it's been increasing. However, we can now say that 1 in 5 people are engaged at work. And I think that's a bit sad. It's actually a little bit less in Australia and New Zealand. So, we're not all that satisfied. We're not all that happy at work. I think that's a bit shit too. And workplace stress is on the rise. So 44% of workers who were surveyed recently in this global poll said that they're experiencing stress during a lot of the day yesterday. That's nearly half. 40% were worried a lot of the day yesterday. And just under 1 in 4 was sad, and just over 1 in 5 were angry for a lot of the day. I think that's a bit shit too. Although the Australian figures are telling us that we are a little bit more stressed, but we're less worried, sad or angry. So at least that's a good thing. Still not very good scores though. So yeah, there are a few things I think that make us think that the workplace could be doing things a little bit better. Over the pandemic, I think it gave it an opportunity to shake up our thinking a little bit about the workplace and reconsidering work. And people have been reassessing what's important. I don't know if you've noticed that, questioning how we work and when we work and what we want to do. And that's led to some interesting trends. I sort of think about it as a great reconsideration. So we've heard about the Great Resignation and where people are leaving their jobs, just, thinking about, I've had enough, let's get out of here. Not quite as big a thing as you can see in Australia, but with the current workforce shortages, we're really, really noticing that a lot of people are changing their jobs, just rethinking what they're doing and looking for somewhere else to do it. We've also heard about something called quiet quitting. So if people aren't leaving, then there's a phenomenon that was started on TikTok where apparently people share that they're fed up and that they're just going to do what's required and no more. Although if you're announcing that on social media, I'm not sure how quiet the whole quitting thing is. But people are really angry and they've had enough. They're sick of increasing demands, a lack of fairness, and they're only going to do what's required. But I always thought that what's required was what was required. And there's a new one too called anti-striving, which I only heard about a little while ago. And this is rather than people feeling angry and just saying that they're quietly quitting. This is about people who have absolutely no guilt about switching off at the end of the day and saying, enough is enough. I'm doing this work and then I'm going off to do some other stuff. It's a real shift in mindset around prioritizing things that matter to you and your family, and really trying to create a balanced life. Okay, so why do we care though? Maybe this is normal. We've just, life is just full of work and work isn't meant to be fun, and just get over it. But there's a classic George Carlin joke that sort of captures that a little bit. Oh, so you hate your job? Why didn't you say so? There's a support group for that. It's called Everybody and They Meet at the Bar. Yes, but I think we do care, and we care for lots of reasons. We care because a job gives us some income and some security. It's handy for buying stuff and, doing things. So we quite like it because, we get a little bit of income out of it. We also get a bit of identity as well. So it talks a lot about who we are. We spend an awful lot of time at work, and we spend a lot of time out of work talking about what we do because it's important to who we are. And for better or for worse, I think society places a bit of a value as well on what it is that we do, and put some judgments around that. As I say, not always good, but yeah, we get a sense of identity out of the work that we do. We also make some great friendships there. We're very social creatures and we enjoy connecting with other people. So not individually all of them, some of them are just rubbish, but generally we quite like connecting with people. And also it gives us some purpose. Work gives us purpose, something to do that's meaningful, adds value to the world, adds value to our world. It's part of what makes life worth living. And it's also really good for our psychological health, because despite the figures around stress in workplace, those with the least positive psychological outcomes tend to be those who are the long-term unemployed. So work is actually a protective factor for our psychological health and well-being. And as Oscar Wilde says, the best way to appreciate your job is to imagine yourself without one. Now, what does shit look like? And how bad is it where you are? Some of the organisations that I've been in are a bit like this. I tend to think about workplaces a bit like a river, and they can be healthy and supporting all the life within and around them, or they can be full of all sorts of crap that doesn't belong, and it slows down the flow and the health of the river. And I often look at this image and I think, if we could see all the pollution in our workplaces as easily as we could see it in this river, would we be able to do a little bit more about it? So to help diagnose exactly how shit your workplace is, I've come up with a little diagnostic chart. And it's like the Bristol stool chart. If you don't know what that is, Google it. It's hours of entertainment and fun. But I call mine the shitometer. And it sort of goes a little bit like this. So the first part of the shitometer is full of shit. This is workplace hell. You're in the type of workplace where you just can't seem to get away from the bad stuff. You're talking about it consistently, and then you go, oh, I just don't want to think or talk about this any longer. And as soon as you say that, you start talking about it again, because there's just no way to get around it. Even when you're at home, you wake up in the middle of the night, there's just no let up, there's no respite. Whether it's, unfair treatment or an unmanageable workload, unclear expectations, no support from your manager, time pressures. I think of this as being you're one straw and a camel with a very, very bad back away from going on some chronic stress leave. You're beyond anger, which is a bit of a problem at this. You're just so exhausted, and you start to lose your mojo and your confidence. And yeah, work just feels shitful. I remember being in a full of shit workplace. I'd drive into the car park in the morning after struggling to get there, and I'd open the door to get out and my legs would not want to get out. It would feel like treacle walking into the office, because my body was just saying, don't go there. It's not a good place to be. Unfortunately, I think quite a few of us have had a situation like that. But maybe it's not quite so bad. Maybe rather than being full of shit, where it's workplace hell, it's just shit, which is purgatory. So in just shit workplace, you're sick, sad, and possibly acting out, because at least at this stage, you can still be a bit cranky about it. You're angry. It's not a good situation. But there are moments where you can find a little bit of focus to actually get some work done, maybe even a little bit of joy from time to time, but they are pretty rare. And you can think, well, this workplace, well, that's just shit. Or there's a bit shit. So this is more like Earth. There's still good things happening, but it's not all hugs and puppies. And without some due care and attention, things could go pear-shaped pretty quickly. So you might occasionally think or hear or say, that's a bit shit, because things aren't going quite well. But in this workplace, the crappiness is a little bit more limited. There are ways to work around it. Sometimes it's just a particular situation or a particular person, and it's a little bit easier to get away from it. There's a greater sense of potential and possibility. Then there's the no shit workplace. This is workplace heaven. You find that everything's going well. You're very, very well rewarded for what you do. You have a really supportive team who challenges you around the meaningful work that you're doing. Your manager is really interested in your development, your progression. It's just heaven. And I know this is a no shit workplace, even though you can see that there is a little bit of shit there, because you'll be describing what your workplace is like to someone who isn't in a workplace heaven, and they'll go, no shit. There'll be a sense of awe and maybe even a little bit of jealousy in their voice, because they can't believe that someone can be having this experience when theirs is so completely different. So let's just sum up and think about where you might be sitting at the moment in your workplace. Cool. Now, thinking about the workplace, we all come and we react slightly differently to things that go on, to events that happen that'll make the workplace a little bit shit. So let's focus for a moment on how we react, because not everyone deals with this the same way. Some people take it in. They interpret the situation as completely their fault. They feel they're to blame. They internalize it, and that's really not healthy. Introspection, reflecting on things that have gone wrong isn't a bad thing. It's a very, very healthy thing, because you need to understand the role you played so that you can progress what it is that you're doing, so that you can learn and you can grow. But when you take things in that are beyond your control, or when you listen to people who are starting to need someone to blame, then you're just going to lose it big time. And I've watched people spiral as they just start to lose confidence, and it's just not a good place to be. So taking it in is one way to go. Taking it out is the opposite. So people get frustrated with what's happening at work. Frustration boils over. People become aggressive. They start blaming other people, and that gets really nasty and toxic. It's just unacceptable in the workplace under any circumstance. Regulating your emotions is the job of every grown-up human being. And it's fine to feel angry. It's fine to feel frustrated, but it's not fine to take it out on those around you. So talk to people about it, but don't add to the shit in the workplace by being one. It may be understandable, but it's never, ever acceptable. The other way people can take it is they can just take off. They can go, I've had enough of this. So they're not going to take it in and damage themselves. They're not going to damage other people, but things are just so bad that there doesn't seem to be any other option than to just leave, just to take off. Sometimes it's the only rational response. So when it's impacting your health, when it's compromising your values, then it's probably time to think about moving on. But dropping the mic every time something happens is probably not a great idea. We grow by dealing with the tough stuff in life. That's just part of it. So if you do decide to take off, just remember two things. the grass is not always greener, and you're going to be at the next workplace. So make sure that you deal with the shit from your previous workplace and don't take it to the next one. You don't want any ghosts from previous workplaces haunting you. Another approach is not to blame anyone, yourself or someone else, or just to take off. It's to actually take it on. So sometimes people just lean into the shitty situation because they have a feeling that there might be something that they can do, something positive and productive that can help people, themselves or their colleagues and the business. Sometimes the situation you're dealing with can be a bit rusted on and it seems impossible, but I encourage people that there's usually one thing, a very small thing that you can start doing that can make a difference. And we know that from little things, big things grow. Now, what usually happens is that you need to start asking questions. You need to start talking to people positively and respectfully about what's going on for you and find out what's going on for them. Maybe it's the same. Maybe they can bring a whole other perspective that shows the problem in a different light. Come up with an idea. What can be done? Is there a way to support what you're doing? Do you need to ask permission or just seek forgiveness? And if it's that shit, maybe it's seek forgiveness. I think even if you try and fail, you feel better if you still have to take off, that you attempted something. And you never know what you're going to learn from these experiences. Plus, you never know who's paying attention, because someone in the organisation somewhere might be noticing that you're trying to make a difference. And that can always pay off, if not now, then a little bit down the road. So yeah, that's another way to go. All right, so what can we do about it? Well, let's start with us. First of all, we need to keep our shit together. If you're in a shit show, stop piling on. That's what my mother always said. No, she'd never say anything like that. You don't need to be a shit, as I said. As cliched as this is, you really do want to focus on being the change you want to see. It's not okay to lose it. And what you need to make sure you're doing is, I know you've heard this a lot in the last few years, but take care of yourself so that you can take care of your own emotions. We really need to manage how we look after our bodies and our minds so that we can manage our emotions. That's our job. That's what being a grown-up's about. You can't outsource that stuff. When I feel that I might be losing it and that I might be taking the express train to shit town, I horrify myself by looking at this thing called the Cartman's drama triangle, usually because I'm going to see myself on it somewhere. And when I first heard about the drama triangle too, I actually thought it was where reality television contestants went to die. Well, they didn't die. It's just sort of, they mysteriously vanished in the drama triangle. So you might be familiar with it. This is what it looks like. And I have to ask myself, am I hitting any of these, the corners of these triangles? Am I being a victim? Am I looking for someone to save me? Am I giving my power away? Am I being a whiny little bitch? And am I taking it in, really? So am I being the victim? Or am I being a persecutor? Am I being a bully? Am I micromanaging people? Am I gossiping about stuff? Am I taking it out on other people? Or am I being a rescuer, riding in on my trusty steed, ready to step in and save the day, basically because I'm thinking that everyone else is pretty useless and isn't going to be able to get anything done without me? It's not a very, very good place to be, but if I find myself here, I know that I need to get my shit together. The nice thing is that someone put a little flip side on this, and it's called the empowerment dynamic. You can do that jaunty little backflip, and rather than persecute, you can think about how you challenge. Don't make it personal. Work on the ideas and the situation, not on the people. And rather than rescuing people, coach people. Don't take care of their shit. Help them to discover what they need to do for themselves. And this relieves you of the responsibility, and you can channel your desire to help in a much, much better form, because coaching rocks. Now, rather than being a victim, take control. Even if there's one little tiny thing that you can do, think about what that is and then you can move one step closer to a bigger goal, because you know what? You're stronger than you think, and you have more options than you think. They aren't always good options. They aren't always the options that you want, but usually they're there and you can start taking control. The other thing that I get asked about a lot is maybe it's not me, it's someone else. And I hear that. What do you do when you discover that you're working with a bit of an ass? Okay, so I've got some really, really bad news for you about that. You remember what we just talked about with getting your shit together? Well, it rules out a lot of the things that my imagination would sometimes like to do when people are being a bit irritated, irritating me a little bit, or a situation is getting frustrated. Because look, let's face it, it takes so much time and effort to be a reasonable grown-up. And why does it have to be me all the time? If everyone else would just, get themselves together, and look, that's as it may be, but there's only one thing that you have control over, and that's you and what you do. And I know this sucks, but you just have to work with this person. It's not like you have to become BFFs and, braid each other's hair or anything. I remember one time, I'll give you a personal family story, which puts me in a really, really bad light. So I'm not sure why I'm telling you this, but every Christmas, my mum wants to buy me a Christmas present, and she likes buying lots and lots of things all year. She loves shopping. I hate shopping. And she buys me lots and lots of tiny little things. And I think like the average quality of these presents is like an ugly cat fridge magnet. So I get about 50 ugly cat fridge magnets for Christmas, and I like to buy one thing, one substantial thing that's practical or beautiful, that people can use and enjoy. And we sort of have this discussion from time to time, don't buy me lots of little things. And she said, well, I don't know what sort of thing you'd like. And I'm going, well, just buy me one thing. Maybe it's get me a massage voucher or a new toaster, or you could buy me an Audi. But she just doesn't seem to get the hint. And she'll buy me all these tiny little things so that I get the joy of opening them each Christmas. One Christmas, I was a bit frustrated. It had been a long flight to get there, and there were things going on, and I saw the big pile of presents again and opened a few of them, and I said, hello, have we met? Every year, Mum, I tell you, please don't buy me lots and lots of little things, because, I don't really appreciate them. And you can see that might not have been the best thing to do. Let me show you why. So there's an event that happens. I get some crappy gifts from my mum again. And my reaction is to give my 90-year-old mum a mouthful. And the outcome of that is shitty Christmas. That's what I get. So instead of doing that, there is another way. So I still get the crappy gifts, but this time I think about what is the outcome that I want to achieve. And I want lovely Christmas because I get to spend time with my mum. So my response, instead of having it out with her, is just to be grateful, to say thank you, and then go home and give everything to charity. It's like a win-win-win. Mum gets lovely joy in giving me presents. I get to give lovely things to charity and have a lovely Christmas. So thinking about the outcome that you want when you're dealing with crappy people is a better way to go. And let's face it, if you keep being nice to them, you're going to ship them that way. Now, the wonderful Viktor Frankl said, between stimulus and response, there is a space. And in that space is our power to choose our response. And in our response lies our growth and our freedom. So every time we're dealing with someone who is difficult or a tricky situation, we can think about it as an opportunity to grow and be free. And if that's true of someone who lived through the Holocaust, I think we're setting some pretty low bars here, arguing about who didn't do the dishes in the kitchen. Now, one of the things that I also think about when someone or something's sticking in my craw, I feel it like it's like a fish hook, and I can actually visualize it as a fish hook that's stuck somewhere in my body. It's caught me, and they can tug away and play with me like a guy on a fishing line until I manage to get the hook out. Sometimes it can be a bit painful because look at that barb, but I imagine myself with my fish hook just snipping that off and carefully releasing it. So that's actually something I'll do. And I know it sounds a bit wacky, but it seems to work, is that I'll just get my fish hook and I'll go, no, you're not keeping me any longer. I'm going back into the pond. So focus on what you can control. Be aware of where your biases might be and try and understand what's coming up for them. Don't make it me against them. Understand what the outcome is that you want. And one general rule of thumb is to avoid gossip. Most importantly, go into these situations with curiousness and some compassion, because you never know what's going on for the other person. But yeah, don't let them put that fish hook in. Be curious, not judgmental. And apparently that isn't a quote by Walt Whitman, although I've always thought it was, but apparently not. So it's a helpful mindset to have in pretty much every situation. Maybe, according to legend, not so much for some cats, but apparently they can find that fatal. But for the rest of us, being curious is a good thing. Now, there's lots of other things that you can investigate, and some of the ones that fascinate me are around dealing with, incidents, what happens in particular incidences, well, that just happened. Influencing change at work, which often feels like pushing shit uphill. Eliminating what's not serving you. So are you working on the stuff that's really, really important, or are you just, hoarding stuff in your life? And call bullshit. So speak up about things that matter and how to do that, really well. And then get shit done. Do what matters. Do it brilliantly. Do it so well they can't ignore you. And celebrate when everything's sort of groovy, because, yeah, there is a lot of really, really good shit happening in organisations, and I don't think we should ever forget that. One of the things that I do to look at that, whether I'm working with a team, whether I'm working with an individual coaching client, is I focus on 3 different aspects to examine the shit that's happening in the world, in your world, and whatever that is, you really need to look at it quite closely. And I think it's really important to think of these 3 aspects, but only to focus on one thing at a time. So focus on something that's really important to you, and then start looking at what are some of the beliefs that are either holding you back or supporting you to achieve your one thing. Also think about the structures that you put in place. Now, for an organisation, that might be your org structures and it might be your processes and your policies. But for an individual, it could be things like habits, and just who have you got supporting you? Who have you got that you can call on for advice? Who's going to keep you balanced? And the other aspect that we talk about is agency, meaning, do we have the time, the skill, and the autonomy to act? So thinking about whether we have the capability, whether we have the capacity to do it. Are we committed to it? And how do we make that happen? So when we're working together, focusing on these 3 things is going to help move us forward much, much more quickly. Sometimes we'll just look at one thing and, one of those aspects, because looking at one thing is good. But when we just focus on one aspect, we can lose momentum, because we don't see how things are, like beliefs or our ability to act or the structures are actually still holding us back, and we get focused on just one of those aspects. So always really, really good to closely examine your shit. Now, work can be shit, but it can be bliss as well. And we can find ourselves in situations where we're up to our neck in it, or we can use our shit to fertilise our growth sometimes. We need to think about how we react and how we manage others and our relationships and how we influence people. but don't try and do it all at once. Remember, find one thing to do and do that quite deeply. So I'd love you to ponder what's one thing that you'd like to work on to make your work life less shit. And then think about, what are the beliefs, what are the structures, and what's the sense of agency I have around that. Thanks, Rose. I think you're on Zoom, on mute.
It was better than last time. I actually got to watch the whole presentation this time. But it's absolutely brilliant. And we've all worked, I'm sure, in organisations that have been, no shit, a little shit, just shit, and, total shit. So at one time or another, I think. And one organisation can be all of those things, I believe.
Absolutely. Yep, it absolutely can. It depends so much on, the manager that you're working with, the work that you're doing. Yeah, absolutely. But organisations can take a little bit of responsibility for that too. There's lots of ways that organisations can work on that, even if it is in pockets. It's really important to try and get, the values and the mission and the purpose that they're working for across the organisation sort of delivered in a good way, because if you do have those pockets, it sort of leaks out eventually.
It does. Sometimes, if there's shit in one department, it does can transfer to another department or across the whole organisation, and it only takes one person, and that one person may be brilliant at what they do, but they just may not be a good fit for the organisation, and that really can be harmful to the whole organisation, and as much as their work is valued, their personality just doesn't match, and that they really shouldn't be there, because they're making the workplace toxic.
And they're really unhappy too, because that's what I think. It's like, you can't be happy if you're this angry and picking on people. Like, what must your life be like? Because obviously something's not working for you. So, what support do you need? What beliefs are you holding on to? And, do you have the agency, the capability to change?
Yeah, a lot of times it happens with the workplace bullies and the sexual harassment and the just all those other things that shouldn't even be in workplaces at this day and age, because we've had so many teachings and learnings over the last 20, 30, 40 years that these things still, that they shouldn't be happening now.
No.
And I don't know why they still are. To me, it's dumbfounding.
It is dumbfounding, and to me as well, which is sort of, the point of all this. We spend billions and billions of dollars every year on leadership programs, just to realise that we haven't moved the dial on engagement at all, and stress is getting worse. So, what's happening? Because it's not rocket science. It's, people working with people, and, things like ego and power and politics just getting in the way, and we don't need it.
No, not anymore. No, we don't. And it's got to stop. And it sometimes, I used to work for a government organisation, and it was male dominated, and there were no female managers, and these guys had been working there since they were 15, and when I started there, they were well into their 40s and 50s, so very entrenched in ensconced in their behaviours and everything. When I left, I went to a retired officer's evening, and I was told that I was a brilliant officer. However, I was ahead of my time and they weren't ready for me. And I thought, well, why didn't you just tell me that when I was there, so I didn't resign? Because I loved my job. I loved working, for that organisation, but I couldn't work with some of the people because I just felt that I was being bullied and harassed and because of their behaviour towards me. But I didn't realise that some of my behaviours too weren't all that great. I was being a bit of a spoilt child, I suppose. But we didn't ever have a discussion about it, and so much could have been resolved with just a simple discussion.
Yeah, some good communication. And it's funny that you talk about sort of male dominated area. I'm running a couple of sessions, events shortly, called Make Work Less Shit for Women. And so it's a face-to-face event. And one of the first things I talk about is I actually flip the title. So it's not Make Work Less Shit for Women, but Women Make Work Less Shit. You know, we know that having women in the workforce actually makes it a better place to be, even though it means that the pay goes down. But you get better ideas and better outcomes when you know, are more inclusive, not just for women, but certainly, you know, the research does back that up. So yeah, that should be a fun night. Looking forward.
Yeah, and when are these on, Gayle?
So the first one's in Melbourne on the 13th of April, I think. Yeah, 13th of April. And yeah, looking forward to that. It's going to be a hoot and a half. So
yeah, sounds like. And you've got a couple of books. One's iDevelop, how to take charge of your professional development by becoming a conscious learner, and Do One Thing and Do It Deep. How to focus and energize your workplace.
Yeah.
And you're working on Team Up, how to lift your people and productivity.
Yeah. So it's all basically the same, around the same idea, is that we need to focus on one thing. So if it's your professional development, then focus on Project You and do Project You in little chunks. What is it that I want to develop in now? And it doesn't mean that you have to, you know, go to Harvard Business School and spend lots of money. It's actually quite easy to get information and find people to support you these days. It doesn't need to cost you a lot of money. And also, if you're working in a organisation, how can you lead change, even if it's just a small change, really effectively? And you do that by focusing on one thing, or tying up a bundle of things, so people only have one concept that they need to deal with in the change, because it's so you know, it can get so distracting and so distressing if people sort of don't have a nice hook, like this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to do it, and there's some nice things there to talk leaders through, how they'd be a sponsor. It talks about the sort of campaign that you need to have that's engaging other people, because once you engage people, you know, you get them on board, so you have less resistance. And yeah, the sort of communications that you can put out to really support that. The Team Up book is going to be similar, so I'm still struggling my way through that one. But yeah, it's about really empowering teams to develop self-leadership, to increase their autonomy and to work more collaboratively. And that's, you know, it's a really energizing thing to see teams step into that space.
Yeah, and there in a lot of workplaces there aren't a lot of team building exercises. You know, you sort of sometimes you're just shoved into a workplace, into a team, and you know, you may not be a good fit for that team, but it's, you know, you don't really have any say in it. So
yeah, well,
so then it becomes shit.
Yeah, and you know what sometimes passes as team building, just, you know, is not my sort of fun. You know, let's go out and, you know, make a square with a blindfold on. It's like, yeah, no, this isn't really helping me. I think fun is really important in your team, and that you should do that. Absolutely, go out and have a drink and don't think about work and talk about other stuff. But then when you're in work, then make what you're doing sort of the fun thing that you can be doing. So how is it that we're going to work together better? Yeah, so I'm a little bit resistant to some team building things.
Yes,
I like to build around the work that we do, because not everyone enjoys the same stuff.
To a lot of team building exercises, and they weren't really team building. It was just something they were told from higher above that they had to do, and it was just a total waste of a day.
They can feel like that.
Gayle, where can people find you if they want to work with you?
Okay, so gaylesmerdon.com. I'm on the interweb, pretty easy to find. Also on LinkedIn, I post lots of stuff there every week. Yeah, so just get in touch at hello@gaylesmerdon.com. And yeah, love to hear from you, love to hear about what's happening at work for people. I work particularly with government and not-for-profits. And yeah, love to hear from you, hear what's going on.
Wonderful, Gayle. As always, a pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on, and again for, you know, I think we've seen each other twice now in 2 weeks, which is absolutely amazing.
How amazing.
Yeah, love it. Love it. Love it. I will talk to you again really soon. Thanks again.
No, thank you. And great to chat to everyone. Take care.
You too. Bye-bye.
Talking with the experts.